whether it's a region or it's an urban school or non-urban school, we may be able to come up with something, but right now we don't.
Race or ethnicity variable?
No, but the name one is you can read the little documentation. We just do that out of the top 1,000 names in the U.S. Census. What?
What about SES?
Now, that said, when we get to the section on delivery, you can use this system with your peeps. So then you know all that stuff, right? So if you're using ours. So we'll let Joseph go.
I'm really sorry to jump in, and also I'm disappointed that I have to leave, but they scheduled this session after speaking at 2:15.
Yeah.
So but I'll try and come back after. So just to say my background, I'm really interested in this because I come from basically having done my PhD in experimental and computational psychology, where I was interested in how asking why help learning, and then a postdoc in the context of online learning, where I tried to run experiments with platforms like Khan Academy, edX, Coursera, Moodle on-campus learning management, and now I've actually evolved towards actually designing technology for researchers. So how do we take the 6 months and Khan Academy MOOCs and set them up so that all of you can actually basically do the research you've been doing, but now in an online environment? And so I'm just going to touch on some things very briefly, and not enough detail to really understand, so just sort of put a pointer out and let me know if you're interested later. Basically, that's my email, and this concept of MOOClet is a framework I've developed that I think helps kind of meet the needs of, in a very domain general way, of many different experimental researchers, as well as also people who want to do data mining. And the way so two things. One is we're considering a competition, and curious your feedback, but also it might be a way to use like concept. And the kind of key idea behind this competition is right now you're all early adopters, so if you come here, you get hands-on proposal experiments, they're going to get running all kinds of different skill levels. But as you have increasing numbers of researchers doing it, and we want to be efficient about how we're allocating participants, the format that I've sort of proposed we consider is actually competition. Where we say, here's an example of 5 skill levels in Real School Math. Here are the things you can vary about them, what IES calls malleable factors, but basically the things you'd use as experimental conditions. And here's the data that you're going to get back. Can you propose some experimental conditions where some of them are practical? They're sort of experimental conditions for teachers, because if a teacher sees it's good, they're going to want to keep this and use it. And some are for you. So you want to test that experimental condition against 1 or 2 others that will let you test the scientific hypothesis you have in mind. And then we can then actually review those. And there are a bunch of different workflows we're considering, like having teachers look at them, having people in the platform, even perhaps running pilot studies with them. And then the people who are winners, they're the ones who get the experiments run. So you can see this might be a more efficient way of giving you a concrete thing to respond to. Here are 5 skill builders, here's the data, here's what we can manipulate. And putting out a call in general to experimental psychologists, education researchers, human-computer interaction, and then actually trying to see which of these are the best that we can pull out. And then also, not just running your experiment, but actually running your experiment side by side with someone else's. So we can actually sort of crowdsource researchers and see which ones are working best. The kinds of things, again, very kind of basic. I think that many of you will have good ideas about what it should be possible to change and what data we should provide. But for example, if you think of a skill builder, which I think you've seen, but basically problems with feedback and hints, how might you ask your scientific question in the context of changing the kind of hint that someone gets? How might you ask in terms of changing the feedback? And the kind of variables that will be available, you saw a long list of them before, but things that the platform might prioritize, or teachers would be, can you influence how many hints students use? How accurate they are in the problems they're solving? How accurate they are in problems that they come upon subsequently, or how much time they spend? And one thing that we'll also include for this kind of competition, at least in its draft proposal form, is performance on known transfer problems. So everyone who submits a proposal sees these are transfer problems that we're going to use. But then actually there should be unknown or hidden transfer problems so that you can't necessarily teach the test directly. And those could even be designed by researchers or from proposals. But the idea would be we can then have actually a range of measures on which we can assess the experimental designs. So in a nutshell, we'd be kind of curious if you have any ideas on how to structure this, and also let you know this is likely coming out. We'll see the exact timeline, but you can let colleagues know about it. And just a quick concept that I'm just going to again point at and get you thinking about is, within the context of thinking about this competition, the kind of idea here is we want people to propose experiments, but we don't know exactly what form, what they're going to want to manipulate, and what data they're going to want to get back. So this formalism I've developed, I call it a movelet. And basically, it's a way of saying, well, let's take a piece of technology component and set it up so that in a very general way, people can look at it and know what they can vary and what data they're going to get back in real time. And so, just to show you an example, if we've been looking at how to make an assessment scalable movelet. Well, what it means is that you can take this and you can make different versions. So check, we can already do that. For example, you can take the skill and you could change, add motivational messages above the problem statement. That's something I've done in Khan Academy. You could add reflective questions above the problem statement or within hints. That's something I've done in edX. You could change the problem statement itself. You can modify hints or feedback. And I'm sure you can actually think of many other kinds of changes you can make. But the key idea is this is a movelet, which means to say we're leaving it up to you that you can make changes that you see fit. And you can see now it's aligned to practical idea. Let's improve a problem with actually experimental conditions. Basically, you make a version that you think might be better, and that's why a teacher cares. But on your side, the version you change is actually an experimental condition. And the other idea is that we're going to link this movelet to a user variable store. So the idea is that just as you saw a list of variables being specified before, what we might do is try and abstract away some of that to show the kind of key outcomes, like accuracy or hits needed. But also, actually, we're going to now let you specify the experimental variables. So you could put in your design actually in terms of saying, well, add this variable in of condition. And so it's actually going to be entering, you're going to enter this, and it's going to come right back out in that Google spreadsheet. It's not apparent, right, from what I've said, why that's valuable, but you'll see in a second. What this means then is, in addition to putting the variables, you'll also specify a policy. So what are the rules based on information in this variable store for people getting different versions of movelet? Well, here's a simple one. Again, straightforward. You could just set it as some words. But the idea is to make this an algorithmic process. Well, if conditions A, then show version 1. Show the version that's the default. If conditions B, then show version 2. Well, just show the version that I've added a hint to. Now, what's interesting is we've set up all this extra bit of detail, but actually, look what it does. It actually lets us formalize experimenting and personalizing in the same language. Let's say instead you weren't interested in experiments, you're interested in personalizing. Well, then you would say, here's a policy where you want to personalize. If a student has a growth mindset, well, then give them the version of the movelet or the skill builder that has tips on how to solve the problem better. If they've got a fixed mindset, then actually give them a version where you've got a motivational message above that emphasizes them they can get smarter through hard work. So again, the key idea is now, anytime we make two different versions of a resource, we can either experiment with or personalize within this framework. And one thing that I've done within edX is actually use this to actually start off by experimenting. So we're just testing A against B against C. In fact, there was 27 conditions, so a 3x3 design. And then as we discovered interaction between experimental conditions and user characteristics, all we had to do was flip a switch, change the policy, and we started actually personalizing. And we actually are right now been doing a hybrid, where you never stop experimenting and you never completely personalize. You actually just change the weights. So if you think about it, 50 people in experiment condition A and 50 experiment condition B is kind of like saying, I think they're equally good. But if you find actually that A is working better than B, well, why not make that 17A and 70B? So it's still random, but it's weighted. And then if you find that there's interaction with mindset, well, for people who are in the growth mindset condition, let's give 80% of them A and 20% B. In the fixed, let's give 40A and 60% B. And the idea is we're not stopping our experiment, so we might actually have a chance to discover even better ways or other interactions. But we are kind of trading off helping students with actually doing experimentation. So that was kind of a lot. If you understood all of it, well, then you're about 20 times smarter than me, and probably only about 5 in my estimates. So please feel free to ask me more questions. But this is kind of a new concept moving forward as we think of how do we structure technology in assessments or other platforms so we can get this experimentation and personalization going at the same time. And also now where everyone can kind of see externally, here's what you can vary, here's the data you have, here are the rules. And so it's also going to make it easier to compare different people's contributions.